Whew, what a week this has been. I know there's a lot of information, but it is all relevant and it all meshes. Like we can't talk about curriculum without talking about observation and assessment. So what is curriculum? Curriculum is the intentional learning experiences designed by a teacher or team of teachers in response to what they know and observe about children. So some considerations about children's learning include our understanding of developmentally appropriate practice, which you all have done some reading and writing about, I believe, in this class. Engage in teaching practices that are at the child's developmental level, right? So are you making sound educational choices, sound choices of activities for young children based on their needs? About to get interrupted by my child. Hi. Ew. Okay, gross. Sorry, mom life, and challenge them enough to promote progress and interest. So that zone of proximal development. And if you haven't learned about the zone of proximal development yet, we may have talked about it. I don't recall. That's a theory by Lev Vygotsky, and that has to do with what a child can do with assistance versus what they can do on their own, and the time between that where they're learning how to do something with assistance and accomplishing it to do it on their own, that's the zone of proximal development. And so when we're challenging them, are we challenging them within their zone of proximal development so that we don't make things too easy or too hard? And then we create goals that are both challenging and achievable. Think about yourself for a minute. Have you ever set a goal for yourself that was a bit far off and you crashed and burned? I live that every day. And that's how children feel when you set goals that are too hard for them. They crash and burn and they feel frustrated. And then, of course, we have to understand best practice and not make assumptions about young children's development. Further, principles of teaching on children. So the science of teaching is called pedagogy. If you haven't heard that word before, that really just relates to the science of teaching and the skill of teaching. And to really be good at pedagogy, we have to understand how children learn. And young children, what you learned in this course throughout this quarter is that children are concrete beings. They learn through sensory experience, they learn through doing. They have to have direct experiences with their world to make sense of what's going on around them. And they have to have time to reflect on their own actions and experiences. Have you ever seen a kid just sitting quietly thinking what they're processing, right? I know it's few and far between to see a child quiet, but when they are processing. They also do that in their sleep. So do you. And then repeated experience to foster formulation of concepts. You know, if you have a hot item, a hot activity that you notice the kids are consistently engaged in, keep it out. Don't put it away. If they're consistently engaged in whatever activity it might be, something's going on in their brain that is so important that they want to stay engaged. So don't put it away. Let it be out. Even if it's not on the lesson plan, leave it out. And also something to consider is if you notice the children, you got something out that you think is super cool and the kids are not playing with it, there's a reason, right? Put it away. Put it away or find a new creative, interesting way to introduce it. Um, you have to recognize that children learn at their own pace, their own unique pace, and they need support from adults. And so we also hear the term more knowledgeable other, and that might be a child. So having children who have different skills, they're all going to have different skills. And so sometimes you'll see children helping other children as they're working through a new developmental process. And then you have to have communication and consistency between home and school. And so when you get to week 11, you're going to hear about families and family engagement. It's important. Let's talk about interest areas. So if you walk into an early learning classroom, you will likely see some very similar things. Almost all early childhood classrooms and even kindergarten classrooms now will have interest areas or centers or um, I don't know what else they call them, stations sometimes. But you'll see similarities. There'll be a music area. Maybe that's in the library. I know it doesn't make sense, but sometimes people put their music area in the library, which is supposed to be quiet. There's an art area, library, a place for math and science. Those are places in the classroom, but these are also content areas, right? We have to provide content around music, even if it's just singing and dancing and learning how to manipulate instruments, art. We're not teaching children how to be Van Gogh, right? Van Gogh had his own creative process. They don't need to be Van Gogh, but they need the opportunity to experience different mediums of art, sculpture, painting, drawing, um, creative or dramatic arts, right? Acting, singing. And then language and literacy, you might have multiple areas in your room that are supporting language and literacy. You may have a library, you may have your circle, small group time area, you might have your, um, it just escaped me, your writing area. And then for social studies, you might be doing social studies during your large group time, more than likely. And a lot of people hear social studies and think of their middle school social studies experience. Social studies in an early childhood classroom literally means their social development, learning how to be a good friend, learning how to interact in social settings, learning about safety. That's social studies for the young child. And then math, you likely have a math area or math center in the classroom, but you're also doing math at free choice time. You're doing math during small group time, large group time, and same for science. We were already through the part of the week where we talk about physical development, intellectual development, social development, and emotional development. But here's a way to think about where those content areas fall under development. So when you think of physical development, we're talking about the small muscles in the hands and the face, and large gross motor refers to the core and the legs and the upper body strength, which you can teach through creative movement or build, not teach, but support through creative movement. And then emotional development can be supported through music and art. And when you think about emotional development, I really want you to remember to like write this down somewhere, ingrain it in your brain. But emotional development is separate from social development. They are two different areas of development. A lot of assessment systems lump them together. Emotional development is about the individual and how they relate to themselves, how they understand their emotions, how they feel a sense of accomplishment and love for themselves. Am I capable? Am I lovable? Am I worthwhile? That's emotional development. Social development is how someone relates to others, right? How do I get along with others? How do I understand others? How do I play? How do I share? How do I engage and interact? How do I start play? How do I be invited to play? How do I stay engaged in play? That's social development. And you can support social development through language, literacy, and social studies. And then intellectual development is also language and literacy and social studies, but you can support intellectual development and critical thinking through math and science. Can you tell I'm excited about talking about this stuff? It really is exciting to me. And then we have to think about values of teaching. So we talked about this really early on about values, what makes a good teacher. But we had to think about what teacher means in our society. And so think back to those earlier conversations and what is a good teacher. But you also have to think like this also includes the knowledge and skills. We should know what children need in order to be productive members of society. We also have to think, and that can be subjective based on our own early experiences, right? And then what do you believe about children and what they should be learning? So that might be different than the curriculum that your school is asking you to use sometimes. But if you know that children learn through play, you're more likely to set up opportunities for children to learn through play. And they learn through choice and they learn through peer connections. If you know that and you understand that and you value that, that's what your classroom's going to look like. That's what your classroom should look like. So let's talk about a variety of types of curriculum. So early on, we talked a little bit about models of theory, but this specifically has to do with forms of curriculum. And the first one I have on here is boxed curriculum. And you're going to hear this again in curriculum development class, this part of the presentation. But this is important to know. And if you're a new teacher, boxed curriculum is great because it provides a scope and a sequence, and it's often written with developmental progressions in mind. It kind of takes the guesswork out. It kind of gives you something to do that you're not creating on your own and you're just following a scripted curriculum. And I'll say when I was a brand new teacher, this was my lifesaver. I didn't know. Remember the story earlier in the other presentation about how my co-teacher, my lead teacher, had brought to our center her books of curriculum that she just pulled the page out and stuck it to the board, and we had something to follow. It's kind of like that. And then we moved on to getting a boxed curriculum, and it was similar because everything was scripted, but it did follow a developmental sequence, and I didn't have to guess. I knew what I needed to do each day. I even had the materials. The drawbacks are that it's limited. It's kind of a one size fits all approach. It's great for a beginning teacher. Is it the greatest for the kids? Not always. It limits your academic freedom as a teacher. Um, and you've probably got ideas to teach similar outcomes as this box curriculum that are better than the lessons in the box curriculum. And the veteran teachers are the ones that know that and alter or manipulate or adapt the lessons in the box curriculum to meet the actual individual needs of the children in their classroom. Again, this kind of does imply a one size fits all. Boo. And then we have theme-driven curriculum, thematic curriculum. This is what we use in our lab school when you get to practice being a teacher. Um, and we actually use a variety of models, but this is the main one where our teachers get to pick their topic. And when you plan for math and science, when you get to the math and science course, you pick your theme for the week. And this should integrate all skill areas and developmental areas and content areas. And so you're building a curriculum for a week that touches on all areas of development. And so a theme might be guinea pigs, I don't know, hamsters or something. Maybe it's springtime and sunflowers is your topic, or maybe you're super interested in earth science and you want to do a theme on water. So a theme is a topic that you select and investigate with the children. And then we have emergent curriculum. This is my heart, emergent curriculum. And unfortunately, K-12 teachers don't have enough opportunity to do this. This is where early learning shines because you get to observe the children and pay attention to what they're doing and see what they're interested in and then develop your curriculum. So an example from my time working at that same child care center when I was 18, 19, I worked there for 5 years. Um, the kids one summer, we had some type of caterpillar infestation, and all of the trees surrounding our playground were just filled with these caterpillars. They were dripping, literally dripping from the trees. It was, if you don't like bugs, it might have been disgusting, but I love bugs and I thought it was neat. But they were destroying the trees. But the kids were fascinated by these things. And I'm not lying, they were filling their pockets with caterpillars and taking them home. And I thought this is an opportunity. Let's learn about caterpillars. They're so interested, and they're interested more than just putting them in their pockets. You know, they're interested in what they are, what they eat, what they become, what they do. And we spent the whole summer, I'm not kidding, until those things did whatever they did. We studied caterpillars, and it was super fun. Um, and we were able to teach to every content area and support all developmental domains just through their interest in these caterpillars. Can you imagine being a parent and finding caterpillars in your child's pocket at the end of the day? That's rad. Um, this is just an anecdotal record of some kids who were playing about. I'll let you read it on your own time. You might have already read it. And then we have inquiry-based curriculum. In this, there are levels to inquiry-based curriculum, but this is like using the scientific method to teach and to base curriculum around. And this is my other favorite form or model of curriculum that I do believe K-12 schools are getting better at, especially with the implementation of the next generation science standards. But the levels of inquiry are a process, and it takes a good teacher to know the scientific method and how to apply that to any topic. So this helps children, if you read these, the support to children, it is the scientific method. So having a hypothesis, making observations, conducting research, developing a method for experimenting, collecting the data, analyzing the data, outlining possible explanations, and articulating your findings or creating predictions for a future study. That's the scientific method, and this is a way to teach. And so the first level is confirmation inquiry. This is where the teacher leads the inquiry. They say, wow, look at all these caterpillars. I wonder what we could learn about caterpillars. I wonder what caterpillars eat. And the teacher poses the questions. And the teacher models and scaffolds the scientific method for the children. And then level two is the structured inquiry. It models the confirmation inquiry, but now the kids have a hand in it and they're starting to pose the questions, but the teacher still needs to keep organized the process of the scientific method. And then there's guided inquiry. Now the kids are the ones asking the questions, making the observations, conducting the research. They've done this enough times that they're beginning to do it on their own. They just need a little assistance in remembering the stages. And then level four, I think this is more like high school level. Some elementary school and middle school children do this, but not as often. They have to have done the process plenty of times. I think about my little neighbor who, he's 13. Well, he's 12. He's 12, 13. I don't know. He's been doing this on his own for years, and he is in a gifted program, and he knows how to develop his own questions and do his own research and come to his own conclusions. But it takes practice. It's super, super fun and a great way to teach. And this is a way to talk about the levels of inquiry based on learning. So confirmation inquiry that reinforces prior knowledge. Step two is students follow a step process. Step three is that research questions are only provided, the children do the other steps. And then step four, the student does everything. And then we have project-based curriculum, which is also super fun. And when I think of project-based curriculum, I'm thinking about school plays, and I have a horrific story about a school play, but I will tell you that some other day. Hopefully we get to meet each other in person. I'll tell you that story. But this is when you have something that's a project in which you can teach all content areas and developmental domains. And so a school play, when you think about a school play, there's stagecraft, there's crew, there's stage management, there's the actors, there's if it's not an already written play, there's the development of the story for the play. And you could teach everything through that, right? If somebody's doing stagecraft, they have to have some basic math skills. If somebody's writing, they have to have language and literacy and comprehension skills. If somebody's acting, language, literacy, and comprehension skills. Same with stagecraft. If they're building the sets, that's gross motor and fine motor. So when you think about project-based curriculum, it really is a project that you teach all content areas and developmental domains through. And next we have integrated curriculum. And this is like, this one's a no-brainer to me. And I think more teachers do this and don't even know that they're doing it. And I had to, it's really funny if you take music with our good friend David, who teaches the music for teachers class. I was talking, because I teach the math and science class, he teaches the music class. And I used to be pretty good at music theory. It was something that I studied as a kid. And I wanted to make sure that I had my counting right. I was going to teach basic counting through notes. So I wanted to make sure that I had my notes right and have everything right. And I was showing David how I teach counting through music. He's like, "What?" And I'm like, "You didn't realize that you're counting?" Like, we had a big conversation about it. And it's so great when you think about the link. If you're a musician, you know exactly what I'm talking about. There's so much math in music, from understanding repetition, that's algebra. From understanding patterns, that's algebra, to counting, that's numbers sense. And then teaching science through arts. Have you ever mixed two colors of paint together? That's science. It's something as simple as that, right? And building children's language skills while discussing social studies. Anytime that you're talking about um, safety, anytime that you're talking about, if you're talking about social development and talking about situations that happened on the playground, that's social studies, and that's building language skills. Okay, program approaches. Wow, this is a really long presentation too. I bet you're all tired of my voice this week. You may have heard of High Scope, Waldorf, Montessori, and Reggio. Reggio is not a person. Reggio is a place in Italy. A lot of students get that mixed up. But High Scope, they have a structure of plan, do, review. And so the teacher will ask the student or the child, "Hey, what do you want to do during free play?" And maybe the child says, "Well, I want to build blocks. I want to build a tower." Okay, now's your chance. Go build your tower. And then at the end, you talk about it. How'd your tower go? Oh, I changed my mind. I wanted to build a horse stable. And that's what Plan Do Review is. Waldorf is nature-based, and they teach practical home-like activities, but they teach all of the content areas. It's quite a method if it's something you're interested to research. It takes a long time to become a Waldorf teacher. People like Bill Gates send their kids to Waldorf schools. And then Montessori is really underscored by mixed age groups and just the theory that children need more knowledgeable others to learn from. So you might see, I think the age groups are like 3 to 6, 7 to 9, and then beyond. But it's also based in free play, children making their own decisions, and the teacher is really just the guide. And then Reggio recognizes and understands that children have many languages of expression. So do we as adults. Like we have many different ways that we express ourselves, and Reggio focuses on that. And the environment is the third teacher. So we've talked about thematic curriculum approach, emergent, inquiry-based, project-based, and integrated. And we've talked about high scope, Waldorf, Montessori, and Reggio. And so we could see here's just a way to think about it. High scope tends to be thematic, Waldorf tends to be emergent, Montessori tends to be integrated, and Reggio is very project-based. So if you were going to think, how do you apply these different approaches to curriculum to the different models, there you go. All right, so we've talked about observation assessment. I'm not going to beat a dead horse. We've done that. Enough of that discussion. All right, let's take a pause. We're going to talk about planning. Sorry, I'm going to skip that one. You can read that one. So talk about curriculum planning. Can I just say, as if you're a childcare professional, I feel your pain, right? When you think about, and you know, K-12, K-3 teachers as well, that planning time, you're doing it at home, just like I do when I'm planning for you guys. I'm doing it on my time off because it's just not time during the day. And it could be really frustrating. And I remember planning during nap time, but still having to be alert and present to make sure children were okay. It's hard, but try to build yourself a schedule, and then plan for the children's daily schedule. Think about the objectives, outcomes, and aims that you're trying to accomplish that week. And think about strategies that you'll use or approaches. In our program, you'll find that we do these curriculum concept webs. And so this is a thematic way for planning. Maybe your theme, this could be emergent as well if the theme was selected by the children, but this is thematic or emergent. So you would take your topic and then you would web all of the concepts that you can think of that you know about your topic. And the example here, this is not uh, this is not a meaty example. This is a basic, very simple example. And so when we think about animal habitats, we think about deserts, tropical rainforests, tundras. You know, I might also make a bullet to domesticate it, like a shoot off for domesticated animals who live in maybe aquariums or tanks, or they live in your home. Like I might add to it, but then you can see some words that or define these different areas: desert, little water, hot or cold, sparse plant life. And so when you're creating a concept web, this is a place for you to just put down on paper everything you know about the topic. Regardless if you think it's relevant to the kids or not, this is to see if you have any gaps in knowledge about a topic that you're about to teach to. And then you've got to do some research and investigating to find out the information you're lacking. And so this is just what one looks like. If we were in class, we would do one together on apples. And we would make a full web and we would talk about everything we know about apples, from where apples grow, how they grow, how do they you plant the apple seed? Is it going to turn into an apple tree? How long does that take? Kids aren't going to be able to discover that. They'd be 10 years old before that apple grew apples, right? Or that apple tree grew apples. I've been talking a lot today and I'm getting tired, so I'll try to speed this up. But we would go over everything: colors of apples, taste of apples, different uses for apples, where we find apples, and we would map all of that out together. And then you take that information and you start to think about ways you can teach to that particular topic. This is a sample daily lesson or weekly lesson plan. This is what it looked like when I was first teaching. This is a very similar form to what we used, and it's just basic. And you can see there's a section for readiness and writing, language and literacy, math and numbers, kindness, social studies, science, weekly art, um, and music and movement, and then a theme around the world. So this is just what one form could look like. Here's another. This I've also used one very similar to this. And so it's planned for circle time, language and writing, math and science, arts and crafts, and curriculum enhancements. And here's another form. So now we've got a book for the week, circle time, sensory table. So you can see when you're working in a childcare center or at an early learning center, you might get to choose the type of way that you input your curriculum, and you may not. You may be asked to use the TS Gold version of the lesson plan format, or they may have a lesson plan format you will just have to type into. But as a new teacher, I got to make my own, and then as a kindergarten teacher, I also got to make my own. And so just something to think about all the different ways you can put your lesson plan together. And then if you're more interested in learning about how teaching emotions, there are some links in this presentation. All right, that's all I got for you for this one. Sorry, it's also a little long-winded. Ever since I bought the new version of Screencast-O-Matic, I've gone from 15-minute presentations to 26, but it's great information. I hope you enjoyed this, and this we will discuss further in our discussion board. Have a great week.